all for joining today's webinar subjected Worldwide Governance Indicators and Good Governance Index. Respected lead speaker, Dr. Shekhar Bonu, Director General Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, NITI Aayog. Respected Sri Indivar Pandey, Secretary, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances and Chairman Management Committee of NCGG. Respected Sri V. Srinivas Sir, Additional Secretary, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances and Director General NCGG. The lead speakers, the speakers, Dr. Annapurna Ravichandar, Head Training Resource Mobilization, Policy Engagement and Communication, Public Affairs Center, Bangalore. Dr. Sabir Sheikh, Director, Center for Good Governance. The lead speakers of Good Governance webinar series of NCGG, all leading faculties of Public Administration, Political Science, Sociology, Indian Institute of Management, all district collectors from aspirational districts, senior officials of DRPG, my colleagues from NCGG, Dr. AP Singh and Dr. BS Best, ladies and gentlemen. To begin this workshop, I would like to give brief introduction about the lead speakers. The lead speaker is Dr. Shekhar Bonu. Dr. Shekhar Bonu had joined the Indian Administrative Service in the year 1987, Rajasthan cadre. He is currently the Director General Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, NITI Aayog. He has also held several positions as Sub-Divisional Officer and Magistrate of Bewa, Rajasthan in 1989-91. He left the service as a Special Secretary, Medical and Health, Jaipur, Rajasthan in 2003. Sir has also worked as Director, Urban Development Water Division, South Asia Regional Department in Asian Development Bank from 2004 to March 2019. Sir is PhD in Public Health from Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health, Baltimore. The second speaker is Dr. Annapurna Ravichandar, is Head Policy Engagement and Communication at Public Affairs Center. She holds a PhD in History and is a corporate communications expert with over 28 experience in developing action-oriented communications strategies for global organizations. The second speaker is Dr. Sabir Sheikh, is the Director Governance and Urban Management Groups, Center for Good Governance. Dr. Sabir has joined the Center for Good Governance in March 2010 after 17 years of professional experience in environmental management and urban regional planning sector in Arizona and India. Now, I would like to invite our Director General to give a brief introductory remarks about this workshop. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Poonam. At the outset, I extend a warm and hearty welcome to Dr. Shekhar Bonu, Director General DMEO, NITI Aayog, Dr. Annapurna Ravichandar, Head Policy Engagement and Communication, Public Affairs Center, Bangalore, and Dr. Sabir Sheikh, Director, Center for Good Governance, Hyderabad, for NCGG's Good Governance Webinar Series number 13, titled World Governance Indicators and Good Governance Index. The worldwide governance indicators are formulated by the World Bank on a biannual basis to cover specific areas of governance since 1996. Government has mandated DARPG to monitor, identify and take policy action and also to improve India's performance in the worldwide governance indicators. The DARPG has pursued a similar exercise in the formulation of the National E-Services Delivery Index 2019 on the lines of the United Nations E-Services Delivery Index. A successful example of monitoring India's performance against global benchmarks is the ease of doing business indicators, where India witnessed significant improvement. It is envisaged that the monitoring of India's performance against worldwide governance indicators would bring significant governance benefits to the nation. The DMEO has coordinated the nation's efforts to formulate domestic benchmarks against global indicators across several sectors. We have the privilege of hosting Dr. Shekhar Bonu, who has been spearheading these efforts from the NITI Aayog. He is a man of high distinction, having served the poorest of the poor with great humility and compassion as an IAS officer in the government of Rajasthan. He has undertaken tremendous academic pursuits with the Johns Hopkins University at Baltimore, United States, and then had a distinguished career at the Asian Development Bank, Manila. We are truly privileged to host you today. The National Center for Good Governance has been mandated by the DARPG to undertake formulation of the Good Governance Index 2021. In pursuit of this objective, the NCGG has collaborated with the Center for Good Governance, Hyderabad. The CGG was also the knowledge partner and was involved with the formulation of the Good Governance Index 2019, which was an assessment of states' governance across India. Following extensive consultations with state governments and central ministries, the Good Governance Index 2019 was formulated on a 50-indicator, 10-sector assessment based on output parameters and government publications available in a time series in public domain. The Good Governance Index 2019 was far-reaching in terms of assessing the governance parameters after categorization of states and assigning weightages to each of the indicators. The Good Governance Index 2019 was launched on December 25, 2019 as part of the celebrations of Good Governance Day and received widespread attention from state governments and national media. The Good Governance Index 2021 is currently under formulation, and the Director CGG Hyderabad will present the contours of the ongoing work. As part of the Good Governance Index 2021, the Public Affairs Center was co-opted to monitor the status of India's progress in worldwide governance indicators. We welcome Dr. Annapurna Ravichandar and Dr. Shabir Sheikh to this event. I look forward to listening to all our distinguished speakers on a subject of considerable contemporary importance in the March to New India. This event is the second in the series hosted by NCGG as part of the Bharat Ka Amrit Mahotsav, India at 75 celebrations. We have the privilege of welcoming Sri Indivar Pandey, our Secretary DRPG, and our Joint Secretary Sri NBS Rajput to this event, as also a number of other distinguished participants. At the outset, let me welcome Dr. Shekhar Bonu as the first lead speaker for this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Srinivas. Just give me 1 second so that I can share my presentation. I hope you can see the slides now. Okay. So before I start my presentation today on worldwide governance indicators, I would first like to thank V. Srinivas for inviting me. It's a privilege to join this webinar. And I've just seen more than 50 participants are there. It's truly a privilege, and I thank you. And also, I feel very honored to be among other speakers like Dr. Annapurna and Dr. Shabir Sheikh. Before I start off, I also would like to really place on record the great work that DARPG has done in coming up with very complex, very challenging Good Governance Index 2019, and I wish you all for your next round of index. So my presentation today is broadly divided into 5 parts. I'll start off with a brief introduction about DMEO. This is the first time DMEO is on this platform, so please bear with me. Then before we actually, within DMEO, we deal with the worldwide governance indicators as part of the Government of India's major initiative, that is Global Indices for Reforms and Growth. There I would like to broadly give the overview and the implementation. Then I come to, I touch upon some parts of worldwide governance indicators, and then conclude about way forward. I think there are lots of challenges with this worldwide governance indicators, and how do we take the best out of it and handle the challenges. I think that's how I would like to proceed. DMEO was established in 2015 by merging as well Program Evaluation Office and the Independent Evaluation Office. It is an attached office of NITI Aayog, which fulfills the monitoring and evaluation functions of NITI Aayog. Evaluation, it is the apex evaluation entity. Recently, we completed evaluation of 125 centrally sponsored schemes, where we also looked at cross-cutting themes, governance, climate change, and others. As far as monitoring is concerned, it's a fragmented mandate. Collectors monitors, state governments monitor, ministries department also monitor. But I think where we stand out, I think is our focus is largely on outcomes. As part of it, I later explain what we are doing. So these are broadly the buckets in which we can put the DMEO stars. Evaluation is straightforward. As I said, we just finished centrally sponsored scheme evaluation, providing inputs to Department of Expenditure. We also do quick assessments based on requests from Prime Minister's Office or Department of Expenditure. We produce short performance notes on central sector and centrally sponsored schemes based on secondary data, key informant interviews, and administrative data. And now we are planning to undertake large flagship studies based on themes. The first theme that we are planning to look at is subsidy, where we'll be doing rigorous household survey and so forth. As far as monitoring is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, the focus is on outcomes. As part of it, we also support the Ministry of Finance come up with the outcomes budget in coordination with 65 ministries and departments. We also do support the Prime Minister infrastructure sector review and maintain a dashboard. Likewise, we maintain a dashboard for outcomes also. Then last year, around February, we got this large mandate of global indices for reforms and growth, which will be the large part of discussion. So I'll just let it come back to it later. Halfway last year, we DMEO conceptualized the data governance quality index. When we do monitoring and when we establish dashboards, ultimately the quality of the administrative data really matters. Otherwise, junk in and junk out. Within Government of India, different ministries are at different level. So it's a tool for any entity to assess where they stand in use of IT for monitoring purposes against a frontier. We looked at 6 different dimensions. I'm trying to elaborate a little bit more because these are all critical parts of good governance, and anyone who is interested can visit our website, and we have all these toolkits. They can send an email to me so that I can provide them with the details. Given that monitoring and evaluation is extremely challenging, all capability, and it's also multidisciplinary, we can't expect all those capabilities to be in one institution. So we strongly believe in partnerships. So we have signed partnerships with multiple agencies, international, national academic centers of excellence. And I'm so pleased to see that VStreamOS and DARPG is reaching out and also hosting this type of webinar, which brings multiple stakeholders and different views, which only increases the robustness of the thought process and the decisions that go through. So my real appreciation to DARPG. So now I'll quickly come to the give an overview of global indices for reforms and growth, and then look at how it's being implemented, and then get into the second section. So we got last February, that was the first time. This is an initiative of the Cabinet Secretariat, and they have asked Niti Aayog to be the knowledge partner, and we are doing the coordination. But otherwise, the decisions, majority of the key decisions have been taken by the Cabinet Secretariat. When do we do reforms? Either a crisis leads to reform, like what happened in 1991, or we can benchmark against the best and try to reach them. So I think this whole initiative is to benchmark against the best and try to proactively undertake reforms process. So this is to reform so that it can improve citizen service delivery, create a conducive ecosystem for investments, and enhance ease of living. So there are different components to it. Clearly, we have publishing agencies which publish it. So they are important stakeholders. These global indices also create an impression, perception about a country, which can have impact on foreign direct investments, private sector investments, as more and more investments are also driven by ESG ratings of late. And these are largely annual or biannual publications with varying methodologies. We have plans to set up a dashboard, and the reforms can, depending upon the areas, can be either at the national level or at the state level or even at the city level. So tracking of reforms and also building something similar to the dashboard of ease of doing business is the plan. So we have around 30 indices, around 100 parameters, and around 19 nodal ministries and 46 line ministries. It's a massive exercise. The rest of it I've already mentioned. Sorry. So these 30 global indices can be divided into 4 groups. As you can see, economy, development, governance, and industry. And as you can see, the worldwide governance indicators are part of governance. But interestingly, this later on we'll talk about it. I'll come back to it. But there are lots of indicators which also come from the Global Competitiveness Index. The Global Competitiveness Index is done by World Economic Forum, but it's also part of worldwide governance indicators. So this particular indices, I think, is a little bit more challenging than the other indices that we have. We'll come back about it later. So who are these publishing agencies? These publishing agencies range from well-known World Bank, multilaterals like UN, IMF, OECD, but there are also a couple of activist NGO type organizations where not much is known about their funding or their capabilities or their reach. So they have different range of publishers. And again, within the worldwide governance indicators, I find that it is published by the World Bank. But if you dig a little bit deeper, they depend on different sources of information. If you further dig deeper, you have different types of methodologies that are being used. So just saying that it's a publishing agency probably doesn't give the enough information. In this particular case, just saying that World Bank is the publishing agency, so are we going to give it a huge amount of credence? And then World Bank itself says that this data is not mine. I'm outsourcing it from different places. It has standard errors and so on and so forth. So I think deeper engagement is required, clearly, without any doubt. And it's very important because ministries and departments are in crisis mode on a daily basis. Either they have to establish a strong PMU with good capabilities, or establish these knowledge partnerships where a lot more research, a lot more granular work has to go into it. We can't take things at the face value. So now I just want to quickly run through these global indices, and these are the list. We'll share the PowerPoint, so I don't want to get into too much of detail. But majority of the cases, in some of the indices, we do well, but in many of the indices, there's long way to lot of ground to cover for India. So that's the message that I want to give here. So now, who are these nodal ministries? As I said, there are 19 of them. Some of the nodal ministries have a lot of indices to cover. Home has 4, WCD Women and Child has 3. So that way, DRPG is lucky; it just has to manage only 1. It's worldwide governance indicators, but more I read about it, more I realize it's quite a challenging indicator. Just to give a understanding about the challenge, all the other indicators, indices put together, probably there are 1,000 parameters or sub-parameters, whereas worldwide governance indicators itself has around 360 parameters. So in a way, this one indices has close to one-fourth of the total parameters, because the ultimate burden or the load depends upon picking up the parameters and then indigenizing them and then going for reform action. So it's like multiple indices put into one index. I think that's the summary I can have at this stage. So now, once I hope we have you have got the broad idea about what DMO does and where this global indices for reforms and growth fits in. Now, it's a very complex exercise. DMO, the team of DMO at DMO has been working with NIC NIXI to establish a dashboard, has been working extensively with the ministries and departments on this very challenging task. So I'll just quickly go through the implementation arrangement. So definitely we have these publishers. Ultimately, they are the ones. We haven't asked them to publish these indicators. They are doing on it, and it has impact on India. It has impact on many things that happen in India. So they are key stakeholders. So we engaging with them becomes very critical. So who are the other key stakeholders? Cabinet Secretariat is the lead. They review once in a quarter. CAPSEC also takes review meetings at least once in 6 months. Niti Aayog is also nodal for 2 indices. It also leads the Niti communications part, and DMO is the knowledge partner, provides periodic reports to CAPSEC and also support index monitoring cells in various ministries and departments. And I think as a part of the knowledge partner as well as support to index monitoring cells of ministry departments is where I think DMO engages with various nodal ministries. So the functions of the nodal ministry are listed here. I think it's very critical, as our Center for Good Governance colleagues are also here. So what are they? Identify reform actions. So what are the reform actions? So there are, every indices has various parameters, and those parameters lead to the index score, which lead to perception. So we have to, if we want to move, then we have to move the needle. So look at the parameter and then indigenize it in Indian context, and then think through what are the reform actions that are required at the national level, at the state and city level, and then create those enabling environment for various actors to take action. It's quite a complex exercise, and many of them we are already undertaking. Some new actions also are required. So reform areas. Engage with publishing agencies. I think this is probably for good for this worldwide governance indicators. I think this is very critical. I'll present it later, but I think so. DRPG, Center for Good Governance. I think, engaging with publishing agencies would really need that we have to be at par with them in terms of our research, our understanding of our data, methodology, and only then I think we can have fruitful interaction with them. So assembling the good intellectual and analytical firepower would become critical. Then managing stakeholders, media. Then once the dashboard is ready, if you have right information, you can start configuring the dashboard and start using it. Then you have to deal with multiple line ministries. I think this is very challenging. The nodal ministries have to, because when we look at the worldwide governance indicators, it has almost, you have to probably deal with like 20 line ministries. It's so then supporting them and training, and then there are 46 line ministries, because ultimately the reform actions have to be led by the line ministry. It's not the nodal ministry. Nodal ministry can be line ministry for some of the indices, parameters, but for majority of them, there'll be the line ministry will be the nodal. So there's need for this very close coordination between nodal and the line ministries, and a lot of collaborative spirit has to be there. Then state governments also need to undertake these reforms in a federal system. A lot of collaborative spirit in the spirit of nation building has to come through. So we have other at the bottom, as you can see, NIC NIXI is supporting the dashboard development. Then MOSPI provides with the data related support. Then Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is on the communication, and MEA provides support in engaging with the publishing agencies. So these are the broad stakeholders and their responsibilities. So just briefly, I've already touched upon it. We have the global indices. Then carefully look into it. And the next step is to develop India index. So this is where if like DRPG has been ahead of global indices for reforms and growth. So you have been doing work much before GIRG concept came in. So if good governance index fits into some of the parameters of global worldwide governance indicators, I think you don't need to duplicate that work. So those reform actions, and so it's more of a mapping process. Then rest of the things which are left can be undertaken. So this is a process, iterative process that DRPG along with the line ministries have to work. The reform action, I think there's significant work that needs to be done at the ministry level, because they are the line ministry level, because they are the subject matter specialists. They know what are the reforms that need to be undertaken to move the needle in the positive direction on a particular parameter. So we'll come back to this again. We looked at the 30 parameters. So we realized that around 26, we have to drill down to the state level. So the dashboard has that provision. So for each of the parameter, the reform action will be monitored at the state level, just like ease of doing business. Then two of them, like globalization index and financial development index, all the actions have to be taken at national level, so no need for state. Then there are two where cities, probably selected cities, have to be brought in for smart cities index and global livability index. Quickly, India index, so you indigenize, there are parameters, there are sub-parameters. There's also a scoring, weights and scoring that will be given. So the India index will also give scores at state level. Helps in, for example, the worldwide governance indicators. It will be translated, indigenized, which will help in actually scoring the states, which will, through competitive federalism, it will lead to more motivation to undertake reforms. These are a little bit more details about how we do the weighing and normalization process. Likewise, for reforms also, there'll be scoring in a way. This is more like completed, in progress, to be initiated, overdue type. Based on that, some sort of scoring can be given. So these scorings are largely for top higher level management to get a bird's eye view about the scores. So which state is doing well, which state is lagging on performance reforms and so forth. But the real work has to be done at the parameter or sub-parameter level when the discussions take place. This is a quick overview about the dashboard. It will track India index performance globally. The state ranking reform sections are also expected to be tracked. High-end visualization, heat maps and others, reports would also be generated and so forth. So the dashboard is ready, and now we are just waiting for various ministries, departments, nodal ministries to populate and start using. The dashboard has around 7 modules, including index, reforms, progress, visualization, reports, administrative module and so forth. These are the various steps that from 5th February onwards, it's a long journey. So April, this is the month we were planning to launch the dashboards. So different ministries, these 30 indices, different ministries are different level. So we have picked up 5 or 6 advanced ministry departments which are at an advanced stage in their preparation and beta testing them. So we are hoping that while we get the dashboard and beta, all the issues sorted out by end of April, we will be ready to expand to rest of the indices. With this, I will quickly go through worldwide governance indicators. I'm not a governance expert at all. If you frankly ask me, I don't know in which area my expertise lies. So I just go through it because I think there are some important elements for us to understand so that it can give us some idea about way forward from our perspective. So worldwide governance indicators, this was initiated in 1996 in World Bank, when governance was a very important theme there. I think since then governance I don't think has as much importance. So around the time there used to be global experts sitting there. They define governance as traditions and institutions by which authority in a country is exercised, and they look at it 3 areas and 6 dimensions. The first area is the process by which governments are selected, monitored, and replaced, and in which they have 2 dimensions: voice and accountability, political stability, and absence of violence and terrorism. The second is the capacity of the government to effectively formulate and implement sound policies, in which they have 2 dimensions: government effectiveness, regulatory quality. Then the third is the respect of citizens and state institutions that govern economic and social interactions among them, which has rule of law and control of corruption. So they have now come up with the 6 dimensions, and they have gone across the world to examine all the type of data that is being collected through survey and so forth. And then they try to put different sources of information in different boxes. And then they came up with this worldwide governance indicators in 1996. They use close to 30 data sources and use esoteric statistics to come up with this whole thing. These are the different data sources. There, as I said, 30 agencies of different quality. You have Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction, World Bank. These are very transparent. They put everything on board. European Intelligence Unit, you have to pay heavily to get any information from them. So the point is, if you are building a global indices, and if we expect this global indices to help developing countries move forward, then it has to be based on data that is transparent, that is easily accessible. We can't build them on proprietary data where it's not accessible. So I think there is an issue here, and these are the type of issues that we need to deal by talking to the publishing agency. And I think the publishing this worldwide governance indicators need updating. It's a concept of 1996. So I think on this particular indicator, I think engaging with publishing agency is a very important component, along with, of course, wherever it makes sense, look at the parameters, identify the reform actions, and try to push, because it's all about building a nation building. But also where it's unfair, I think we have to engage with the publishing agency. And it's not just for India. If India finds it difficult to access the data, what about other developing countries in sub-Saharan Africa and other places too? So it's an issue about who owns this and who are at the receiving end, and is it fair for those at the receiving end? So these are the different data sources. You can see that there are some with 1 indicator, some with like 59 of them. Like there are 3 or 4 for Africa, so they are only meant for Africa, not for rest of them. So these are not data sets which are comparable across. They're using, so there are 6 buckets. So whatever information fits into that country, they put it, they normalize it and use it. So you end up with 385 indicators, parameters. So it's pretty complex. Out of this, of course, maybe 40 or 50 are not related to India, maybe. So, but a lot of granular work has to be done here, if at all you want to engage with the publishing agency in a serious manner, and if they want to take us seriously. So this is some sort of a heat map that we have generated. So these are the 6 buckets, as I said at the top. So various indicators, various data sources provide various indicators to them. Like for control of corruption, you have 61 indicators, whereas for political stability absence, 26 of them. Voice and accountability, 84. So all put together, 385. So it's interesting. Maybe it's a very good research thing. How far this can be used for driving reforms? Maybe there are parts of it which make sense, but there are parts of it which may be purely academic. So there's I think serious need to relook at this whole indices. So and also there are different data cover different countries. There are some data sets which cover only 15 countries, some covering 203. Like Economic Intelligence Unit covers 181. There's a huge amount of variability in the way this whole thing has been worked out. And what type of methodologies are used? Face-to-face telephonic interview, multi-stage sampling. Some are common across, some are highly specialized to one particular country. Just to give, so there are 30 data sources. So I'll just pick up Economic Intelligence Unit. So it's only one, but it has around 40 of the indicators: democracy index, vested interest, accountability and public officials. So these are the parameter, but again in this parameter democracy index, it's an index. It's an index within an index. So that means there must be a lot of sub parameters in it. Likewise, World Economic Forum on competitiveness index. It has multiple, it talks about quality of overall infrastructure, which is just a parameter. There must be like 20 sub parameters in it. And interestingly, this is an index on the dashboard on its own. You have already seen. So that means for this particular thing, there's no need for a worldwide governance index to do much work, because it's a separate index under economics, thing. So we need to, I think the important thing is look at them 385 parameters, engage with the publisher and say that these are indicators that you need to change. These are the indicators which are already covered by other indexes on the global indices. And these are already covered by good governance index. And these are the residual ones which we think are reasonable, good, and we would like to pursue for reforms and action. I think that should be the probably the way looking forward. Here I just talk a little bit about the methodology. As I previously mentioned, these are all varied data sets, data points, aggregated into 6 different buckets. And they do scaling, and also they use unobserved component model. The truth is, none of them are sensors. They're all estimates. Every estimate has its own standard error. There's no truth about it. When we say India is 56, it's gullible, no? Because it's 56 and with a standard deviation of maybe plus and minus 10. So those things matter when we want to track them over a period of time, because next point also has a standard error. So I'll come back to it. So just putting around 40-50 indicators and mixing them doesn't give a more robust truth, because every point has its own error, and you start putting together, we don't know what's the error margin of the final index that comes through. So we need statisticians also to come into this team to work. So this is, I think, a very important slide. I hope everyone can see it. So I just try to compare India with China and United States. So let us look at voice and accountability. So voice and accountability, India is ahead of China. So clearly the yellow bars are the score, the dark lines are the standard error. So the standard errors of India are way above the standard errors of China. So that means India has been better in 1996 as well as 2019. But if you look at all the other indicators, all the standard errors are, by and large overlapping, which means that with 90% confidence, I can't say that India and China differ in any way on all the other indicators. Because these standard errors are overlapping and between the years also the standard errors are overlapping. Whereas with US, you can see that on political stability, US is ahead. Good government effectiveness also it's ahead. So it's ahead on all. By and large, even if you consider the standard errors, except maybe not. So through this, I'm just introducing the concept of standard error, and also we need to be very careful about taking any percentage or any estimate on its face value, especially when we are trying to compare over a period of time. This is, I hope you can see this. It is basically heat map of World Governance Index indicators of 2019. These are the 6 different boxes. At the left top corner is the voice and accountability. Next is government effectiveness, rule of law. So just look at India and China. Forget about the rest. What are the key things that you can see? This is all the greens are generally in North America, other than, of course, Mexico or Scandinavian and Europe. So you know what is the demographics here. Most of the then I think the important thing is to look at India and China. So India does much better than China. So yellow means we are somewhere in 50 and 75th percentile. We do well on voice and accountability, government effectiveness, as well as rule of law. We are in 50 to 75. Where we where we don't do well according to this indicator is the political stability and absence and violence, which is the lower left box, where that's the only indicator where we are poorer than China. We are either equal to China in terms of percentile. Given the standard error, I don't think we should go to ranking. Maybe percentile is fine. So we do better than China on voice and accountability as well as rule of law. We are same on government effectiveness. We are worse than China on political stability and absence of violence. And we are same on regulatory quality and control of corruption. So we know what has happened over last 30 years and where China is in terms of economic growth and so forth. So to what extent is this information predictive of the transformational work that has happened, changes that have happened in China? Around 400 million people have moved from poverty. We had the largest urban migration taking place. It has become the center for manufacturing. So in a way, what is this indicators predictive of? It raises some questions about the whole thing. So now I come back to finally end my talk with conclusions. So clearly, what needs to be done, a PMU has to be established and engage with the knowledge partners. Given the complexity of the work that I've already described, I think it's very good that National Center for Good Governance and Public Affairs Center is engaged. I think because I think a significant part of work that we have to do with the publishing agency. Because the publishing agency is not collecting any data on its own except for the country assessments they do. There's only 1 or 2 parameters which World Bank collects. All the others are collected through other sources. And there is a need for serious engagement. Then identify common themes and parameters, engage with government stakeholders. And as I've mentioned, this is just repetition of what I've said. Then this is the suggested project management unit. This is more like broad recommendation. And also implementation mechanism and PMU role. Then I think it's we need a lot more work to compare WGI and Good Governance Index. We have around 50 parameters here. I don't want to get into the details. We have 385 parameters there. So which of them? Many of those parameters, as I said, Global Competitiveness Index related parameters are already undertaken in global indices for reform and growth separately. So those part, like around 80 of those indicators, parameters need not be revisited. So we cut them down. Maybe around 50 of the from 50 Good Governance Index, maybe 30 or 35 are related. So that can help us. So the whole, and maybe around 40 or 50 or 100 parameters, there's need to engage with the publishing agency so that they reform or they improve the indicators. So then probably that will lead to a residual of around 40 or 50 parameters, which genuinely helpful in undertaking the reform actions. So this is my last slide. I have a couple of annexer slides. You can have a look at it. With this, I think I've completed my presentation. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you very much. I think each one of the participants, we have now 75 participants in the web room, and I think each one of us was deeply impressed by the depth of presentation and also by your deep understanding of the subject. And now you're asking us to pursue 385 indicators. I recall when we started the Good Governance Index, we started with 126 and we brought it down to 50. Now you want us to go back and work on 385. We'll take it up in the discussion. Let me thank you for this comprehensive presentation and request you to kindly stay in the web room till the other two panelists also make their presentation and we can take up some questions. I will invite Dr. Annapurna to kindly make her presentation, and considering that we have to close at 1:30, I'll request her to be kindly brief on the subject.
Yeah. First slide. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Srinivas sir and Professor Poonam for our dialogue that we've been having for the past few days to make this presentation. Along with me, I have two of my colleagues, Aparna Shivaraman, Senior Program Officer, and Samriddhi Pandey, Program Officer at Public Affairs Center. They actually were the authors of this chapter where we were invited. So to just start with, I just want to spend a minute on Public Affairs Center. Probably many people know, but I always think as the head of policy engagement and communication, that is always good to, introduce our organization. Of course, we are now 27 years old. We pioneered the social accountability tools, which has been well accepted globally by World Bank and other organizations. Our primary stakeholders are government, international organizations, and most important, we engage a lot with the communities by giving voice to the voiceless. That is one of our flagship identity. We also engage with communities in through three approaches. One is we use data analytics, which is applicable to human development. In this regard, we have something called as the Center for Open Data Research, which was established about 3 years back. The data analysts from that team work very closely with our researchers to ensure that we bring out evidence-based research. The next is we always believe that research should be action-oriented. That's why we call it as action research, because we believe, since we engage as a think tank with the government a lot, both at the state and at the central level, every government always wants a proof of concept or evidence, especially to help them with policy making decision. Last but not the least, we also ensure that a sustainability aspect is left behind in all our projects by building the capacity and conducting appropriate and customized training, especially with the communities. Since there's a we have less time, I would have loved to share with you all two of our very recent projects on both, FPS, food security, and SDMC, which is school monitoring team. But it's all there on our website, so I don't want to get into that. Moving on, I just want to give you all a background that Public Affairs Index is one of our very proud and happy and flagship product that we've been bringing out for the past 5 years. All the data that we use in PI, the analysis is taken from public domain, because often we are asked, where did you get this data from? In fact, this year we created an FAQ and we put it on our website, because it's good that the public is reading, understanding, questioning us, asking us, how could you bring this out? So we actually have a very comprehensive FAQ. It typically ranks the states and union territories in India on the basis of their performance. There are several indicators that are constructed and on 3 pillars, which aim to capture all the important human development aspects. Like Sir was just saying, in fact, when we started PI, it was started with a huge amount of indicators, but as we've experienced and come down to 5 years now, and the 6th is on, we believe the lesser the indicators, the better and rich is the product that comes out, and we are using it now. So based on our expertise, the National Center for Good Governance invited us to make a presentation on PI, and that's how we were invited to contribute a chapter, as Srinivas Sir said in the beginning. I now would like to hand over the rest of the presentation to 2 of my colleagues. Aparna Shivaram will start, and then Samriddhi will add on. Thank you for this.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aparna Shivaraman, and I'm a Senior Program Officer at the Public Affairs Center. I was also the team lead and one of the authors for the Public Affairs Index 2020, and also a part of the team in 2019. We had written a chapter on the worldwide governance indicators and sort of India's performance in the indicators. An analysis we had done was to look at India's performance from 1996 and also look at India's performance comparative to select SAARC countries. So although Dr. Shekhar did take everyone through the WGI, so the reason why the WGI gained so much popularity is because governance is a very qualitative and subjective concept, but it is extremely important a concept to measure. And the challenge primarily is in measuring and quantifying governance, because governance is both a means and end to development. So the World Bank published the first edition in 1996. I don't want to take you through the definition because we've already gone through it, but they looked at it from 3 very key aspects, which is the process by which governments were monitored, selected, and replaced, the capacity of the government to provide essential services and implement sound policies, and how citizens interacted with important social and economic institutions. The uniqueness of the WGI and why we go back to it ever so often is the fact that at the time when the WGI was launched, there were no other measures of governance. The most unique feature of the WGI is the fact that they made it possible to compare countries across the globe. We all know that every country has its own development trajectory, own style of governance, and the WGI made it possible for us to actually compare various countries, whether it's countries in sub-Saharan Africa, in Europe, in South Asia, or in the United States. So that's the whole basis of the WGI, was that it was universally comparable and valid. The biggest challenge the WGI faced, which is also something that we face at the national level in India, is the challenge of data availability. So when they developed the WGI, the biggest challenge was what kind of indicators do we pick up to make sure that we are able to do this comparison at the global level. And what they did is that they took a variety of sources, both primary and secondary, and they went back to this unique multi-stakeholder approach. Now, what the WGI did is that they measured governance as perceptions of various stakeholders, perceptions of the community, perceptions of business and industry, perceptions of governments themselves, to understand how is governance being affected and how is development being affected by the various processes that are in place. So the WGI uses surveys as instruments to collect data and analyze it. And like Dr. Shekhar mentioned, there are several sources that they have referred to actually get a very comprehensive picture of governance. So the WGI ranks over 200 countries across 30 base indicators. And we did take everyone, Dr. Shekhar did take everyone through the 6 sort of themes. So I'm not going to get into this too much due to the lack of time as well. But what I wanted to stress about was also the model and methodology for the WGI. So though Dr. Shekhar pointed out the methodology, a unique feature of the WGI is also that they use a technique called unobserved components model. Now, why is this important? Is because the WGI and the World Bank also agree that governance is subjective. So data cannot capture every aspect of governance. There's always something that is unobserved, and that is something that numbers will not be able to quantify. So what the WGI methodology does is that it uses this methodology, this technique of unobserved components model, to take into consideration that part of governance that is not being measured by data. So the objective is to capture the component of governance that is left unaccounted for, which major other indices now don't take into consideration. So even when you're measuring perception, there's always a part which is not going to be reflected in your number, because the number is a quantification, which is in a way subjective. So the unobserved components model was this technique that the WGI used. Whether this is the best technique is debatable. There have been several other indices that have used their own methodologies. The Public Affairs Index also uses a very scientific methodology a technique called the principal component analysis. And the objective with the Public Affairs Index was also to make sure that we were as scientific as possible. We didn't want any bias. So the weightages assigned as a part of the Public Affairs Index is also completely system generated. In 2018, till 2018, from 16 to 18, we were assigning weights manually, either equal or subjective. But in 2019, we sort of made the shift to having weightages that are generated by the system itself. So we have no role to play in the importance each indicator gets. Before I hand it over to my colleague Samriddhi, I just wanted to take you through India's performance in WGI over time. So we've definitely seen an improved performance in the parameters of government effectiveness. Most parameters, including regulatory quality, political stability, and absence of violence, have improved over time, though this performance improvement has not been extremely drastic, but there has been a significant improvement, though at a decreasing rate. However, when you look at the performance of India from 1996, when the index started, to where we are right now, we've seen substantive improvements in almost all parameters. There's been a very slight decline in voice and accountability from 64 percentage points to 57.64 in 2019, which is the last time the index actually came out. But we have improved in terms of government effectiveness from 54% to 59%, almost 60%. The highest jump has been in regulatory quality, where we were about 26% in 1996 to about 48% in 2019. Another area where we've seen a considerable improvement is the control of corruption, which is from 43% in 1996 to 47% in 2019. An area where we've seen some fall has also been in the rule of law, which is from 61% in 96 to 52% in 2019. So it's not that we've not seen performance improvements at all. There have been significant improvements in certain parameters, but there have also been areas where there is a high scope for improvement. So I will pass it on to my colleague Samriddhi, who will take you through India's performance in comparison to certain SAARC countries in each of the parameters of the index.
Thank you, Aparna. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Samriddhi Pandey. I am a program officer from Public Affairs Center. I was also the team member for the Public Affairs Index 2020, and I'm also leading the Public Affairs Index 2021. So just to give a quick backdrop as to why did we choose the SAARC nations to compare the performance of India was because this is a cluster where the development trajectory is almost similar to for each of the nations that we are considering. So it's better to analyze and compare like kind of state of countries to each other, so that we know the performance, the relativity in performance is better measured through that aspect. So I'll just quickly take you over through each themes of the World Governance Index and India's performance as compared to the SAARC nations. So the first one, what we discuss about here is the voice and accountability. So as clearly seen in the graph, India has been a better performer and India has been consistent over the years from 2009 to 2019. The time period of 2009 to 2019 is selected. Why? Because it's a recent time period, and in 10 years of performance, you can analyze better outcomes of each and every indicator. That's why. So, and also as compared to India, there are other nations who have also seen a rise and in the performance in voice and accountability. Then we move on to political stability and absence of violence. So in this, Bhutan is the top performer, but we do see that India has been taking up an increasing trajectory in this indicator as well. Next, we see in government effectiveness. So as we all have known, and since the initial speakers have pointed it out already, that government effectiveness is a area where India has performed remarkably well over the past few years. So government effectiveness is also one of the measures which tells you that how good performing in terms of human development indicators is your country. So countries lagging behind in this parameter are more vulnerable and susceptible to the human development changes. So India has been a consistent good performer in this indices. So as the other nations as well. I will now move on to the next parameter, which is regulatory quality. We also see that India is the only country who is seeing an increasing trend in this indicator. So it is also like Bhutan and other countries have been trying to cope up with the trajectory, but India has come up to be the leading increasing country for this indicator. Also, when we talk about rule of law, the one country which has all the SAARC nations combined, the one country which has shown a stark increase is Maldives. Though other countries have also picked up pace, but Maldives has picked up a pace which is drastic. So this is one interesting point that needed to be noted. Also, in terms of control of corruption, India has been taking steps, as we all know, in terms of curbing corruption in the state governments, in the central governments, at the local body level, everywhere. And that can be seen in India's performance over time. And we can also see that since 2013 onwards, India has seen a significant rise in the performance under the theme of control of corruption. So all in all, we can summarize this as compared to SAARC nations, since all the SAARC nations are also moving towards the increasing development trajectory. India has also shown a remarkable progress over the years. There is still room for improvement in several themes, several indicators, but it cannot be negated that India has been performing well over the past few years. With this, I would like to conclude and ask Dr. Annapurna to conclude this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samriddhi and Aparna. So we come to the end of our presentation, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me thank you, Dr. Annapurna, and also Dr. Smriti and the other team member for making this presentation. I'll now invite Dr. Shabir Sheikh and his team from the Center for Good Governance, Hyderabad, to kindly make their presentation. Kindly be brief. This is a subject we have debated and presented to the nation a number of times. So I urge your indulgence in concluding it quite quickly so that we can have a question-answer session.
Bringing up the screen. I hope you're able to see. Thank you, sir. This is Shabir, Director at Center for Good Governance. At the outset, I'd like to thank Additional Secretary DRPG Srinivas sir and NCGT Professor Poonam Singh for providing this platform to share the Good Governance Index that CGT has been working on since 2019. In fact, the journey started way back 2017. I have in my slides the journey that we have traversed so far and where we are right now and where we are heading. Before I actually get into the index itself, I just briefly want to spend 1 minute, less than a minute on Center for Good Governance. It's a government of Telangana, earlier government of Andhra Pradesh combined state institution, set up with an objective to support government departments in public reforms, administrative reforms, and governance transformation. Provide that support to the state departments. But then over a period of 19, 20 years of our existence, we've actually started to play the same role for several other state governments as well as ministry, Government of India ministries. It is obviously headed, chairman is the Chief Minister of the Honorable Chief Minister of the state. We also have Dr. Rajiv Sharma, who is the chairman of the steering committee, and the institution is headed by a Director General of Indian Administrative Cadre, Shri Rajendra Gupte. We have distinctly two divisions. One is the Knowledge and Research Division, and then the E-Governance and M-Governance Division. Knowledge and Research Division, obviously, as the name states, does the most of knowledge management and the research. E-Governance is the division which is our Kamdhenu, our cash cow. Basically, that gives us our self-reliance on financial self-reliance. Although we are a government institution, but we are financially completely independent of any of the states. So that much of flexibility it offers. So in brief, this is what we do, and we take up a lot of we participate in bids. We take up proactive studies with different ministries and different state government departments. Now, coming to the Good Governance Index itself, the present government has set up several sectoral group of secretaries. And then one such group is sectoral group of secretaries on governance, which recommended to formulate a governance index to assess the state of governance in the states. Because we had worked with DRPG in conceptualizing the framework for a good governance framework index, we were invited to present before the group of secretaries a concept. The first founding Director General, Dr. P.K. Mohanty, and myself, we both presented before the group of secretaries, and then it was agreed that this should be formulated, and DRPG was given this task, mandated to come out with the index. And DRPG in turn partnered, CGT partnered with DRPG as a technical partner, and this is how the journey started. A brief background is, there are several sectoral indices that are prepared, that are available in recent years, like you have aspirational district index, like livability index. You have sectoral specific indices like water, health, education, etc. But then our research, our literature survey has shown us is there is no one comprehensive index that is designed and developed by government, other than what the Director General Demu was talking about from Niti Aayog. Now that we are moving towards, we are progressing very fast. In the last 2 years, we have really we have covered a lot of ground. But then when we started way back in 2017-18, there was very limited information or indices that were available. What we had was something here and there, some academic researchers publishing in EPW or the World Governance Index, the World Bank published World Governance Index itself, and then the Public Affairs Center's Public Affairs Index, which is, the data that they use is from different sources, but then not solely from government sources. So that is how we set out our journey. We also had India Today bringing out the Governance and Development Index, where the media house ranks the states in different parameters. Again, we felt that it has a limited reach or limited comprehension. It does not cover the entire gamut of governance. That's our. So we before we actually started designing the index itself, we did a quick literature survey, and obviously the audience who have sat through the previous last 1.5 hours or 1 hour would have actually gone through the Public Affairs Index, what Public Affairs Center has talked about, and then the one that I referred to, we prepared a state of governance report in 2008 for DRPG, and that was the basis of how CGG was invited by the group of secretaries for for a concept and conceptualizing the index. And then in EPW, there was one article that was published on quality of governance, which was limited to 18 states, but then it gave a framework, it talked about a methodology. And then the World Governance Indicators itself, which we had Director General Demu talking about in detail, as well as PSE presenting where we stand and what is the progress that India has made. So what I'll do is I have in my subsequent slides a brief of each of these. What are the learnings that we took from these different indices in order to develop our own framework. I'll quickly skip them. But then if we actually look at state of governance report itself is a 3-tier structure where there are 5 dimensions, 18 components, and then 123 indicators. Primarily, it is 61% of the indicators out of 123 are required primary data collection. Obviously, it's a time-consuming exercise. So it remained only as a report. It never got executed, and it never got translated into a tool where one could use in assessing the governance. And then we have Public Affairs Index itself. While UTs were not covered when we initially looked at the Public Affairs Index. Now in the recent indices in 2019, 2020, they have included union territories. It has. We thought, I mean, we maybe now that PSE is also on board, it's part of this webinar. I give them the right to correct us. We thought the state governments do not have much of a role when they prepare their index. That's our assessment. I mean, I'm sure Public Affairs Center would have a point of view on that. And then the EPW published paper basically was limited to 17 states, and it was only on select dimensions and very few sectors. One primary sector that was missing, even in the early indices that the PSE used to bring out, was agriculture sector. So these are the certain things that we were actually looking at when we were doing the literature survey. And worldwide governance indicators itself is a countrywide. It does not basically drill down to states or local government level drilling. But it gives a framework. So we did look at it and what is the methodology that they used, and borrowing from all this, when we started to design the Good Governance Index, we looked at the existing frameworks that I talked about very briefly in my previous slides. We also looked at what is called the Sustainable Development Goals that India is signatory to, the UNDP's goals. We also, when we were finalizing our indicators, we looked at what are those indicators and how the Sustainable Development Goals are and how close we are in terms of some of those goals. I mean, so that we, when we bring out that index, we are at least partly contributing to where India is a signatory and where India can then claim to basically reaching or having achieved certain things. And because we are we were designing the index for comparable purposes of state versus state and assessing the state of governance in the states, we obviously had to look at what is there in our constitution. Schedule 7 basically gives, differentiates our, the subjects are clearly demarcated, which are state subjects, which are center subjects, and which are in the shades subjects, etc. So these were our governing documents and governing frameworks when we designed our index. But besides the framework, we also had to look at what is the approach that we were to take. We wanted it to be a 360-degree. We wanted to have an approach where the entire gamut of governance is included, meaning we are not limiting to, we are not excluding any particular sector. Our initial survey, our initial literature basically led us to believe that some of the indices had left out agriculture as a sector, or left out some other sectors. We primarily, we are, I mean, even now we are a agrarian kind of a country. Large part of our population still resides in villages. Agriculture does play a big role, and governance in that sector determines how citizens are happy, not happy, whether their livelihoods met or not. So therefore, we wanted it to be a 360-degree, a full, covering the entire gamut. The core at the heart of this index should be a citizen-centric, is what we wanted to design the index to be, where citizens have a direct bearing on the indicators that we select have a direct bearing on the citizens. And then the other characteristic that we set out to we included in our design is generic to specific. What I mean by that is we had sectors which are generic in nature. When we are talking about, for example, agriculture and allied sector, it is a generic. But then the indicators, part of the indicators that are included in that itself then becomes very specific. That's how it was designed. And then obviously the indicators had to be finalized or zeroed upon after extensive consultation. So we had extensive consultations with the state governments, central governments, ministry, government of India ministries, and series of discussions with ministries, because there are 26 ministries that have a direct bearing on the indicators that we have included in our index. So all these ministries were consulted thrice, 3 times, and then only after getting a confirmation that whatever indicators that we are finalizing or we are proposing have the data sets that we are looking for, only then we have included those indicators. Any indicator that does not meet the principles that we have actually zeroed upon, we have not included. Now, what guided us and what led us to arrive at this slide is, when we talk of any index, we talk of generally indices have what is called input parameters, process-oriented parameters, output and outcome-oriented parameters. At the end of the day, when we are comparing states, we compare the states on the outcomes and outputs that the states have achieved. So when we were presenting through a series of presentations before the group of secretaries, one guiding factor that was basically guiding us was to limit it, so that limit to output and outcome oriented indicators, so that process and input indicators are subsumed under output and outcome indicators. One other principle that we adopted in selecting the indicators is applicability across the states. So there are several indicators which do not have, some states do not have some of the indicators, so we cannot, we have not included those indicators. So any indicator, the 50 indicators for 2019 and 58 indicators for 2021 are applicable across all states. So every state has that particular indicator or data set that they have shared it with the line ministries. Therefore, that becomes a key principle. And the data sets are time series based, meaning they are published year after year. Whatever is the periodicity that the data is published, but then they should be published within that periodicity. So if any indicator is published every 3 years, it should be published every 3 years. Only then that indicator makes a cut with the good governance index that we have designed. So one-off data set, and based on that one indicator designed, we are not including that. We have not included that. Although many states have suggested that we should consider those. We have been successful enough to convince the states that these principles have some method behind it, so some application of method. Therefore, states also are more or less largely on board, and ministries obviously are on board. And then the indicators are designed in such a way that they are very simple, they are easily measurable. That is one challenge that even the previous speakers, including the Director General Demu, was also talking about, that measurability of governance is one primary criteria. So we believe that the index that we have prepared is measurable, meaning it is quantifiable. Although we are not discounting the fact that governance to some extent is perceptive based, but then for us to be including those kind of indicators, we would have to basically collecting primary data, collecting through surveys, we'll have to collect that perception surveys, etc., and then translate them into quantifiable ranks, or and then include them into in the index. So because these are initial years of index, we believe that going forward this will continue to be an index which DRPG or Government of India will continue to publish. That we want it to be maybe in future generations that would be included, but as of now, those are excluded. So with all these consultations, as opposed to other indices that are available in India, which are 3-tiered, we have zeroed in on only 2-tiered, meaning there are sectors, and within the sectors there are indicators. So there are 10 sectors in the Good Governance Index, and then the indicators can vary. In 2019, there were 50. I have a slide where we present under each of these sectors how many indicators are there, and then there is a room, or there is obviously flexibility to put more indicators within the sector. And it is not to say that new sectors cannot be included. We can obviously bring in new sectors, but then as of now it is 10 sectors, and then 50 in 2019 and 58 now. I presented this. I mean, it was not a one-way kind of indicator selection. It was through a series of extensive consultations, both at state level with the ministries, and then presenting before the group of secretaries, because the mandate actually came from the group of secretaries on governance. Therefore, we had to basically, they are also key stakeholders. So this index actually was developed as a result of all these extensive consultations. Then we also had, in initial years, consulted sectoral experts in finance, environment, several. We reached out to the sectoral specialists, presented our methodology, presented our indicators, took their advice, tweaked our methodology as per their advice, and then that's how it has been finalized. Now, if you actually look at the progression, I think in the opening remarks, Additional Secretary was mentioning about how we started. Initially, we had about 12 sectors and 112 indicators. To 2019, which is what was published in 2019, we had about 50 indicators, and now we are proposing to have it in 58 indicators. But then the progression happened because we took a lot of input from group of secretaries as well as ministry consultations. How come we reached from 112 to or downscaled from 112 to 50? Because the principles that we had set out in designing this index led us to leave out some of the indicators which otherwise were very good indicators, but then they are not that principles, meaning some indicators may be applicable in some states but not across all states. Some sectors may be very specific to a few group of states but not across all states. So therefore, those were our governing principles. Therefore, we have reached to we have this 50 indicator index. Now it is a 58 indicator index. Also, the grouping of states is essential because not all the 36 governments that we have, including union territories and northeastern hill states, etc., are not equal in terms of development outlook, the size, geography, climatic conditions, etc., etc. So we readily adopted what DRPG has been using, the grouping of states for their Prime Minister's e-governance awards and different type of awards. We adopted that. While having adopted it, we presented it to the stakeholders, including the ministries and the state governments, and then generally there is a general agreement on these states, on this grouping of the states. So there are 18 states which are generally plain states. We have Northeastern Hill states as a group, and then Union territories are separate as a separate group. So when the index is developed one as a composite index, and then there is an index for it is not big states. Actually, we had a during our recent consultation, some Goa specifically pointed out that it should not be called big state, should not be grouped under big state. So we are going to rename it as the other states. So there is one index for other states, one index for Northeastern Hill states, one index for Union territories. And then there is a overall composite index as well. So these are our 2019 sectors and then corresponding indicators, number of indicators. So in agriculture and allied, we had 6, commerce and industries had 3, human resource development had 6 indicators, 6 in public health, public infrastructure and utilities had 9, economic governance had 4, social welfare and development has had 8, judicial and public security has 5, environment had 2, citizen-centric governance had 1. These are the quick glance at the indicators that I talked about. In agriculture, this is the set of indicators, right from overall agriculture, growth rate of agriculture, growth rate in grain production, horticulture, milk, meat, crop insurance. In 2020 and 21 index, we have 2 more new indicators that get added, that are getting added to agriculture and allied, and that came about after a series of consultations. ENAM based indicator is going to be included. So is going to be poultry and egg production as another indicator. Under human resource sector, we had quality of education, gender parity index, retention rate at elementary level, enrollment ratio of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities, skill development, skill training is important, placement ratio, including self-employment. Basically, skill. The 6th one is related to skill development. Public health, the suspect. The regular.
Can I request you to kindly conclude, please?
Yes.
We have to close at 1:30.
Yes, sir. So this is the list of indicators that we had for 2019. For each of these indicators, we assigned a weight. Okay, before I go to the weights that were assigned to the indicators, the 10 sectors that we had were given equal weights. So every sector had a basis point of 10 basis points. And those 10 basis points were then further divided among the indicators that were the part of the index, part of that sector. So if one sector had 6 indicators, the 10 basis points would then be assigned based on the secondary research that we did. Each of those indicators were given at varied weights, and based on that, the calculation was computation was done, and then overall composite index was developed. I wish we had more time to explain to you what the methodology that we adopted. In 2019, this was the result. So while this is a composite ranking for the other states, this is how the states were ranked. And Northeast and Hill states, this is how the states were ranked. And Union territories, the ranking of the states is given here. The score that we have calculated is what I said. If we had more time, I would have explained how we arrived at that score. Obviously, there was as Additional Secretary Sir was mentioning in the opening remarks, it was launched on 25th December 2019. Wide media coverage, a lot of appreciation. Many states actually who had their own apprehensions were forthcoming and appreciated how this has come about. There were also certain inputs for improvement. Especially states like Gujarat had certain observations that we are basically factoring it in 2021 index. Puducherry government had specific inputs. Tamil Nadu government had specific inputs. So we are factoring all those. In 2021, we have almost completed our consultation process. As I was mentioning repeatedly that we are moving from 50 to 58 indicators. Sectors remains the same. We went through an extensive consultation process again, sought inputs from different governments, state governments. Karnataka, Gujarat, Punjab, Odisha, Telangana have given their written comments, but then very recently, a week ago, we had 2 weeks ago, we had national consultation both with the ministries as well as with the states. There were more specific comments that they have made. We are factoring those, and we have almost finalized. Yesterday, also, we had a meeting, internal meeting with DRPG, NCGG, and CGG. We are more or less formulating that 58 indicators. So this is the last slide that I have, sir, which presents what is the change between 2019 to 2021. So like I was mentioning, agriculture has 2 more indicators. Commerce and industry has 5. So when we are saying this increased number of indicators, we are basically presenting to. We are factoring in the newer indicators or newer sectors that needs to be given due weightage in each of these sectors. One example is GST was launched in 2017. It must it must find a place in any index, governance index. Therefore, commerce and industry has one indicator that got included. So that's how environment earlier was 2 indicators. Now it is 4. Citizen centric earlier was only 1 indicator. Now we have progressed it to include 2 more. So this is the general status. So way forward that we have is, like I was mentioning, consultations with the state and ministries is almost complete. 58 indicators. So we are going to be taking this to group of secretaries for their final review and vetting and approval. Once that is comes forth, we will be releasing the 2021 Group Governance Index in coming months, maybe 1 month or 2 months. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me start with Dr. Shekhar, and I think the breadth of the presentation in terms of a global perspective of India's governance models was really remarkable. In fact, it struck me that how much China and India look similar on many governance indicators, except on voice and accountability, where we are far ahead. How do you see, in terms of the various dashboards that you are preparing, where do you see our preparedness, and how quickly do you think we can join this launch that you are having in April? Maybe we may be a few days behind, or you could. How soon do you think we can join your dashboard and get into this momentum of global indicators?
Yeah, thanks, Srinivas. I think you can join probably next week if you want. But definitely, this is one of the most challenging indices. I can clearly see. We have 1,000 parameters for 29. For this alone, it is 365. So, and also you have been ahead of the curve. You have done a lot of work even before. So to make it meaningful, I think some amount of granular work probably is required so that it can deliver really quality inputs for this nation. Thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Annapurna, and would you like to compare, instead of on a SAARC basis, would you like to compare with, say, G20 nations and run an algorithm on how India compares with G20 nations?
I think we can, but Samriddhi, would you like to?
Yeah.
I'm sure we can. Yeah.
Definitely, sir. Comparison across countries is very much important, and not just with SAARC nations. We can definitely do it with G20 nations. We can definitely do it with countries which have a better development trajectory or have a poorer development trajectory. We can definitely do that. So I hope it answers your question.
And I think it's also important. It's a good question, sir, because we learn a lot from others, because we've been doing it for 5 years. As I said, this is our 6th year. With every year, there has been new learning, new avenues, and new relearning for us. So I think that's a very good idea, and definitely it can be done, sir.
I have a question for Shabir ji. Can you please tell me if you can take a closer look at the 380 odd indicators that Dr. Shekhar has mentioned, and see whether some of them can be fitted into the Good Governance Index?
Most definitely we can. I think we should look at it because there is as I mentioned, when we started our journey, what we had was very limited in terms of resources. Now, DTI has actually taken a lot of lead and a lot of ground has been covered. So it is time that we actually look at it and see if some of those indicators can be actually factored into our index, our good governance index, and even if that means tweaking our principles and trying to broaden the principles criteria for the indicator selection, we must do that. I have actually with me our team members who have been thick and thin with us. Vaibhav is joining and Vaibhav here. Maybe he would also jump in and share his ideas on how we can look at those 365 indicators and how best we can compare and contrast.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Sir, definitely, as you suggested, and with your support, we will definitely look to those indicators. And wherever, sir, basically, means my point would be that if the data is available for all 36 states and UTs of our country, if those kind of indicators, we will definitely look and include in our GGI, sir.
One observation that I had, and maybe this is more towards Shekhar sir. So we talk of I mean, when we were comparing with China, I was looking at some of the 6 dimensions that World Governance Index is comparable. We were very closely matching with China, especially in rule of law and accountability, and even political stability. I thought, I mean, what Additional Secretary Sir was talking about, should we be comparing to China for our political stability comparison? Because it's a completely different political setup there as opposed to what we are. They are because there is a one-party government, so therefore there will be obviously a political stability. But in democracies, I mean, at least a democracy like India, political stability has a different meaning or different connotation. So how comparable that is something that we need to actually critically look at it.
We have our Joint Secretary, Mr. Rajput, is also in the web room. Would you like to say anything, Rajputji? Kindly unmute yourself. Kindly unmute yourself.
In fact, it was a wonderful presentation, particularly from Shikhar sir. And in fact, we have been given responsibility to work on WGI. So we look forward to take further guidance from Shikhar sir.
Okay. So may I now request Dr. Poonam to kindly extend the vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. The time is, I feel very honored to propose vote of thanks today, sir. First of all, NCGG is very grateful and thankful to Dr. Shekhar Bonu for accepting our invitation and talked about worldwide governance indicators and good governance index. It was a great learning, sir. Kindly accept our heartiest thanks, sir. We are very grateful to our Secretary, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances Chairperson, Management Committee of NCGG, Shri Indivar Pandey, sir, who has graced this auspicious event. We are very, very thankful and grateful to you also, sir. NCGG is very grateful to our Director General, Sri V. Srinivas, sir, who took lead to complete this Good Governance Index project and organized many virtual meetings to fulfill the expectations of quality-based outcomes of GGI indexings. Thank you very much, sir, for your immense support. And I would like to thank to Dr. Annapurna Ravichandar and Dr. Sabir Sheikh for delivering their presentation in their webinar. NCGG is very grateful to you. And we are also very thankful to Joint Secretary Sri NBS Rajput, sir, and the Madam Jaya Dubey and the other senior officials of DRPG who has given immense support. And NCGG very thankful to all the senior administrators, eminent academicians, senior officials from DRPG and my colleagues from NCGG. Thank you so much for joining this auspicious event and have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Srinivas.
Thank you. Thank you very much.